Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Tuesday, September 13th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Toledo game is in 4 days, the game against Michigan in 74 days. We are going to be back at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center later on today to talk to Ryan Day, Jim Knowles, and CJ Stroud. We're going to be streaming those interviews live on YouTube at youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle, and of course, we will have complete coverage at Buckeye Huddle all afternoon. We're going to be also going to be talking recruiting today on today's show, but we're going to be talking about some big-time players who recently visited Ohio State, and also some very big prospects who Marc Givler just got a chance to watch in person. So Marc is my guest this morning. Marc, thanks for being here.
Good to be here.
So I guess let's start with the guys who visited just a little over a week ago for the Notre Dame game. There were three very big-time defensive linemen who were there: Keon Keeley, Matayo Uiagalelei, and Damon Wilson. Things were looking like they were trending in a good direction for Ohio State after those visits, but, in recruiting, one thing we know, you always have to wait a little while, let the shine of the weekend fade a little bit before you know where things really stand. You had a full breakdown on where you thought things really do stand with each of those guys, including how you'd rank them in terms of the most to least likely to sign with Ohio State when all is said and done. BuckeyeHuddle.com members can find all that information on the Huddle board, and if you want a real deep dive on those three guys, that is where to find the goods. Sign up today, BuckeyeHuddle.com. But Marc, something we can talk about here. You said something really interesting in that thread on the board that I did want to ask you about here. Someone asked you how you would rank the likelihood of the Buckeyes getting one of those three guys, or two, or three, or striking out and going 0 for 3 on the three. Can you give us a sense for ranking how you think those things stand right now in terms of most likely to least likely of those scenarios?
Yeah, right now I think they're going to get two. I think they're going to get Matayo Uiagalelei. I think it's going to come down to, Wilson and Keeley, and kind of, obviously they want to get both of them. Can they get both? It's not completely out of the question, but I think the safe bet would be on them getting one of those two. So I think that's the most likely scenario right now. I think from there it gets a little interesting. Could they get all three? Yes. Could they only get one? Yes. I think those two are very bunched close together there's kind of like 2A and 2B in terms of most likely outcomes. I think the least likely outcome is that they strike out. And that's just a few reasons. Obviously, the intel there is that they're running in pretty good shape, maybe leading or at least in second place for all three of these guys. And then on top of that, it's kind of what they're doing that doesn't involve those three. It's what they're doing with the other targets, and by the other targets, there really aren't that many right now. So they have kind of condensed their search on the defensive line. I think, again, I've been kind of saying this for a couple months now. They're recruiting as though they feel good about where they stand with these guys. This is not a hope and a prayer type of situation. I think they feel very good about where they stand with all three of them. And because of that, we've seen them let a few guys commit elsewhere. We've seen them kind of back off some guys. And so I think right now, like I said, I like where they stand with Matayo. I think that one's going to go a little bit. I think that's going to be a December at the earliest decision. And gosh, that could even be a February decision. But I love where they stand there. And then I thought they made a really nice push for Damon Wilson on his official. They've been right there for Keon Keeley for like a year and a half now. I don't know that they made this great push the Notre Dame game weekend. I think they were kind of neck and neck with Alabama maybe being a slight favorite going into that weekend. I'm not sure that's really changed much since then. So that's going to be a kind of a tug of war there with Alabama, and Florida's involved as well. So, we'll see what happens. But like I said, like where they stand with Matayo an awful lot. And then I like the move they've made with Damon Wilson, and especially if Damon's going to commit here the next few weeks, which he's mentioned he might do.
I like that, the idea. We always talk with recruits about, watch what they do, not what they say. And, they can say it's wide open. And if they're visiting the same school 6 weekends in a row, like, well, I don't know how wide open it is. That's kind of the school version of watch what they do, not what they say. If they're not recruiting anyone else really at that spot, they really are feeling good. They're not just trying to gaslight you. So that's some good news for Ohio State fans, I would say there. And if you want to find much more, again, on all three of those guys, where things stand very specifically with those guys, maybe some timelines, all that kind of stuff, you can find that information on the Huddle board at BuckeyeHuddle.com. A lot more on all three of those guys. So sign up to become a member today, get all of that information, and a whole bunch more stuff, because Marc has been a very busy man the last few days covering some of the best high school players in the state and the country. In fact, Marc, you watched 4 high school games this weekend. Is that a new personal record for most high school games watched in one fall weekend?
Oh no. When they used to have the Crosstown Showdown in Cincinnati, and before it became kind of a longer, elongated event where they used to have like a game of the week type of thing throughout the season. They used to have a big kickoff event at the beginning of the season, and so I think I've had opening weekends in the 8 to 9 game range before. There was one weekend. Yeah, well, gosh, I think one year I got a Wednesday, a Thursday, a doubleheader Friday, and then like a quadruple on Saturday. It was nuts. So it's tougher to find these types of weekends where you can get those like 3 or 4 games like I was able to do this weekend. It's probably the most I've gotten to do in a while, other than the state championships. Yeah, it's not a personal record, unfortunately.
Well, I'm not sure if you get time and a half for overtime in your contract, but if so, I think you earned it last weekend, because I did want to start with a player we've talked about before, but someone who you saw on Friday night, someone who seems like he might be turning into a bigger prospect than people might have thought, and that's 2024 defensive back Aaron Scott out of Springfield. What did you see out of Aaron Scott?
Yeah, he was fantastic. Springfield beat Huber Heights Wayne 21-7. Aaron had an interception, made a break on the ball. The video is actually up on the website if you want to look at that. I posted the interview on I think it was Sunday, and it's got the clip of his interception is in the interview if anyone wants to watch that. But he broke on the ball before the quarterback I think even realized he was throwing it there. So it was just an amazing play. He almost did it again later, but just kind of got his hand in there and punched the ball away from the receiver. Didn't come up with the interception, and just super instinctual, very, very physical, competitive kid. They tested him a lot. I don't know why, but they did. They tested him a lot. I don't know that he gave up a catch all game. I know they tried him deep several times, had no luck there. He had the pick. He had the couple PBUs. He's 6 feet tall. He's getting stronger. He's still got some room to fill out, but he's getting. I'd say he's probably 10 or 15 pounds heavier than he was a year ago. Looks a lot stronger physically. Had a good sophomore year, but they had so much talent on that team that went to the state championship game last year that he wasn't kind of the guy, and he kind of talked about that in our interview as well. As now he's the guy, and so he's had to step up in his play and just his leadership and the way he carries himself. And he carried himself like a lockdown corner. I think, look, I'm going to do my rankings here at some point. I'm probably going to wait at least a couple more weeks, get it through, maybe get into the 6th or 7th week of the high school season so I can see a few more guys. But he made as good of a case to me for the number one player in the state, number one junior in the state, as anyone I've seen so far. And Ohio State's treating him that way. I mean, I asked him, obviously he talks to Tim Walton, but he said the guy he talks to the most at Ohio State right now is Ryan Day. So Ryan Day's not wasting time on Plan B recruits, especially juniors. So that kind of tells you, I think, where Ohio State sees him. But yeah, he was fantastic on Friday, and I think he's certainly in the discussion as the top junior in Ohio.
Well, Saturday you got to watch a triple header down in Ironton and got to watch a guy who you thought might be the best running back in the state of Ohio for 2024. He played in the first of those 3 games you saw, so tell us a little bit about Jordan Marshall.
Yeah, Archbishop Moeller, big-time powerhouse out of Cincinnati. They played Good Counsel out of Maryland, which is another monster program. Stephon Diggs, Eddie Goldman, just to name a couple of guys that have come out of there recently. Moeller did win the game. Jordan had 4 touchdowns. He had 3 rushing touchdowns. He had a receiving touchdown. I think he had about 200 yards. That video is also up on our YouTube channel now, so you guys can watch that. The highlights from Jordan, his 200-yard, 4-touchdown performance. He was so good at camp. They offered him a camp. But running backs, yes, you want to see them at camp, but you really don't know until they're getting hit and, they're reading blocks and everything else. So I wanted to get a closer look at Jordan after his really solid sophomore year last year, but he was fantastic. That's a field that probably had close to a dozen Division I players on it, certainly 8 or 9 at least Division I players on it. I thought he was the best player on the field in that game. He's got a little bit of I don't think he's quite as fast as he's not quite as fast as Travion Henderson as far as top end speed, but he does a lot of the same things that Travion can do in terms of the balance he runs with, his vision, and also the way he catches the ball out of the backfield. He had I think it was 55 yards receiving or something like that. He caught 5 or 6 balls. But he's so good in the screen game, the way he sets up his blocks, the patience he runs with, and then he's got this low center of gravity. And you watch the tape we have up. no one ever knocks him backwards. He's always falling forward. He's just got that great forward lean that he runs with. And so I think he's a tremendous player. I think he's probably a top 5 guy in Ohio in the class, and it's a pretty good Ohio class. It's a deep class. It's a deeper class than I think we've seen the last few years. It's been a little top heavy. So, I think he's the best back. There's probably 5 or 6 guys who are going to get at least Big Ten looks at running back in Ohio in 24, but I think Jordan's the most complete of the group. And again, that's another guy who's talking to Ryan Day an awful lot, so I think that tells you kind of how they view him. And he's supposed to visit for the Michigan game, and that'll be, I think, his next time in Columbus. Moeller plays a bunch of Saturday games. I think it's going to be difficult for him to get there before Michigan week, but I think he's expecting to get to the Michigan game.
Well, yeah, if you've got the make you miss and elusiveness of a Travion Henderson and the always fall forward of a Mayan Williams, that is not a bad combination for a running back. And speaking of Buckeyes and future Buckeyes, 2023 Ohio State defensive line commit Jason Moore. You saw him in that second game on Saturday. I have not seen him play in person. I have seen him in person, and he is a very physically imposing and physically impressive person when you see him, in front of you. But how did he look to you on the field?
Yeah, I love his versatility. He lined up inside, lined up over a guard, he lined up outside over a tackle. He stood up as an edge rusher. And did things at all 3 spots. So he's a guy, I know they're recruiting him as kind of a 3-tech, and I think that's probably about right. I don't think he's going to be a full-time outside guy in college. So I think that's going to be his ticket. But he is able to move around quite a bit. So you think about the Rushman packages and things they've used in the past. But he's a guy who can rush the quarterback. He can apply pressure from a number of different positions all along the defensive line. Obviously looks like $1 million. He's every bit of 6'5", 6'6", about 265 right now. So I'm watching him pregame. I'm like, boy, I know his brother plays basketball at Villanova. Is a heck of a basketball player. And so I'm sitting there. I'm like, oh, please don't be a basketball player, out there trying to play football. And he wasn't. He was physical against the run. They were doubling him. They were chipping him. He was fighting through blocks, fighting through double teams. He was engaged in the run game, and so I was really impressed with him. I thought he was everything he was he's been advertised as a top 100 guy, maybe even a top 50 guy. I thought he was obviously very disruptive. He only played about a half, maybe even a little less than a half of football when it was all said and done. DeMatha handled Cleveland Benedictine. That game was over pretty early, but was very disruptive again. We'll have some film on him probably on the next day or two as you guys are watching this. We'll have some of the highlights there. Several hurries, some big hits on the quarterback there as he was releasing the ball, some nice plays against the run, just kind of showing off his athleticism and versatility. But that's a guy that I think is going to have a very good career at Ohio State.
Well, and if they're recruiting him as a 3-tech, you look at what they're doing with 3-techs like Mike Hall right now. They're lining up over the tackle half the time. So being able to do that already at the high school level, showing the versatility to do that in the high school level, probably, that's something you might carry forward into your college years. I don't know if it'll be standing up at the college level, but that is probably good preparation for what you're probably going to be doing in Jim Knowles' defense when he gets to Columbus. The last game you saw down in Ironton, you saw a Wisconsin running back commit, which pretty much automatically means very good running back based on their track record. There have been some rumors about Ohio State maybe trying to take a look to add Ironton's Jaquez Keys to their 2023 class. Where does stuff stand with him right now?
Yeah, so I think right now Ohio State seems pretty content with what they have in Mark Fletcher. I think they want to make sure it stays that way. Obviously, ever since he committed, people have been asking, is he solid? And it's just, I guess it just comes with the territory with the Florida kids. I don't know. Mark hasn't really given much reason for concern. But schools are continuing to recruit him. Miami for sure is not giving up on that one. So I think Ohio State right now is hopeful that it's simply a matter of, okay, just going to keep Mark Fletcher and we're run it back with whoever comes back next year. Obviously, Travion Henderson will be back next year. You expect Evan Pryor to be back from his injury next year. We will see what Mayan Williams does. That might be someone they could possibly lose to the NFL even. He may take his shot after the year, but you get Dallin Hayden back. So I think right now, plan A is just keep Mark Fletcher, and if something happens in the wintertime, they can double back on the transfer portal or something else to add a depth guy if they think they need one. But with Keys, that's a guy that I've been told, hey, if this becomes a two-back class, or if Mark Fletcher does waver and then they start to get nervous there, this was a guy to watch. But there's not much happening there with Ohio State right now. As a player, he's a great athlete. Didn't get a ton of maybe as many touches as you might think, given he's a Wisconsin guy and Ironton's kind of it's a great small school program. But they spread the ball around. It was kind of a defensive battle there with Johnson Central out of Kentucky. But he's put on about 20 pounds. I think I saw him as a sophomore. He's a much bigger bodied kid than he was when I first evaluated him as a sophomore. He's got good burst to his game. But I think right now it sounds like Ohio State's pretty content with where things are right now.
Well, if they don't see him on campus as a Buckeye in the future, they may see him in Indianapolis in the future if he ends up with Wisconsin. That seems to be how that tends to go between those two programs. Before I let you go, I wanted to kind of tie this all together with this. We talked about Jason Moore, talked about the likelihood of them adding maybe two of the other big-time defensive linemen. So if you get Jason Moore plus two of the three that we talked about at the top of the show, together with Will Smith Jr., where would that stack up among Larry Johnson's recruiting classes? Because he's had some great ones. Is that just sort of, is that an average Larry Johnson class? Is it above average? Is it better than that if you get two of those three, let alone three of those three?
I mean, I think it'd be certainly one of his best. I think the gold standard, and we'll know more probably in like 12 months on this, but I think the gold standard is probably going to be in the sophomore class he has right now with Tuimoloau, Sawyer, Williams, and Hall. I think when we look back, first of all, these guys were all 4 stars or higher. Sawyer and Tuimoloau were two of the top maybe 5 or 6 players in the country. Mike Hall was a top 100 guy. So just in terms of the rankings coming out of high school, that might have been his best. And now kind of what we're starting to see out of these guys here so far, I think they look like they're going to live up to that billing. So I think when we look back in a year or two, that's going to probably be his gold standard class. But, you throw something together with the 2 of the 3 we talked about. I think all 3 of those guys are 5-star caliber players. And then you talk about someone like Jason Moore's, a top 50 type of guy. Will Smith Jr. is vastly improved. We'll see where he ends up being ranked. I don't know, where that's going to fall exactly on paper, but I do know he's vastly improved from where he was a year ago. So he's stock up there. Is it going to be quite on that level? I would say I would probably have it a tick below, just because Tuimoloau and Sawyer were. You could have made a case for either one of those guys as the number 1 player in the country coming out of high school. So I think that kind of takes that class to a different level, and then we see what Mike Hall is doing right now. But once you get past that, I mean, I think it's as good as anything else that he would have put together at this point. I think that's an unbelievable defensive line class, and I think the thing that would be so exciting about that for Ohio State fans would be how well they would complement each other. Because you take someone like Will Smith, who's a true interior guy. He's got some quickness, some athleticism to him, but he's probably going to be a nose at Ohio State. Then you take someone like Jason Moore, who's a 3 tech, but can also maybe play a little strong side end. And kind of the same thing with if you get Matayo, that would be kind of a similar thing, but he's more of an end that can play inside, whereas Moore is more of a tackle who can play outside. So that complements well. And then whether it's Wilson or Keeley, or God, if it's both, then we're having a real interesting discussion about this. But with Wilson or Keeley, those are both kind of pure edge guys. So they all complement each other so well.
Yeah, and that's kind of how that 2021 class was as well. You had the 2 true interior guys and the 2 kind of edge guys, and one was a real strong side guy and one was maybe a little more of a weak side guy, and it all kind of fit together. And if that 2023 class comes together the way the 2021 class does, where 3 months ago Mike Hall was the and also this guy, and he's turned into a lot more than and also this guy in the first couple of games this year. So yeah, that 2021 class does seem like the gold standard. If you get anywhere close to that, that's probably a pretty good thing for Larry Johnson, who does not seem to have lost his fastball yet. That's my hot take for the day. Larry Johnson, perhaps still good at his job. All right, so you can find much more from Mark, his analysis on the guys he saw, plenty more guys that we have not talked about here, as well as a lot more on the 3 defensive ends. You can find that all on the Huddle board at BuckeyeHuddle.com. You do need to be a member, so you should consider signing up today. That is my free advice to you. Sign up today at BuckeyeHuddle.com. And also, if you are not watching this on YouTube, make sure you go to youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. If you are watching this on YouTube and you think you're subscribed but haven't been getting notifications recently, make sure you ring that bell again. I had a couple people mention that they didn't get the notification last weekend for the postgame show, so make sure you ring that bell. So you may have unclicked it or something at some point, or I don't know, YouTube does something, whatever. But make sure you hit that bell so you are getting notified. And if if for some reason you don't see a notification, just know you can always find us on YouTube as soon as the clock hits 0 on the Buckeye game. Our live post-game show goes live as soon as the game ends. Bring you insight and analysis, post-game interviews, much, much more. That is all at youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. We've gotten great feedback on the first couple weeks of shows. We do the pregame show, we do the postgame show. It is kind of a new thing, a little something different this year, a little something different than anyone else is doing, and the feedback has been really, really tremendous. So I hope you guys check that out. Buckeyes will be playing Toledo this weekend. We'll have a pregame show, obviously, before. Postgame show, again, as soon as that clock hits 0 at the end of the game, we will have that postgame show go live. We'll have immediate insight, analysis, then postgame interviews from Ryan Day and the Buckeyes, and then Tony Gerderman and I will go on and do the Buckeye Weekly Instant Reaction show after that. It is usually like 2.5 hours of live free postgame content. Can't really beat that. So youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.